Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to this Rapid Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a deeply vivid historical account by Bahá'u'lláh, the founder of the Baha'i faith. We'll be looking at a profound internal experience he had during a time of extreme incarceration. We're going to break down the text, understand its striking imagery, and explore this narrative of revelation. And we're going to do the whole shebang in under 5 minutes. So let's get started.
Right, so to truly understand this text, we absolutely have to look at the setting. Bahá'u'lláh writes about lying in the prison of Tehran, and he immediately grounds us in this intensely visceral physical reality. He explicitly mentions the galling weight of the chains and the stench-filled air. Because of these absolutely horrific conditions, he notes that he was allowed very, very little sleep. This extreme suffering and complete physical exhaustion, that forms the absolute baseline of the narrative we're looking at today.
But then, during those rare, incredibly infrequent moments of actual slumber, the text describes this sudden, completely overwhelming sensation. He writes that he felt something flowing from the crown of his head right over his breast. The way he describes it is so powerful, he says it felt even as a mighty torrent that precipitated itself upon the earth from the summit of a lofty mountain. Literally like a rushing waterfall. He says every limb of his body would be set afire as a result, and at those exact moments, his tongue would recite things that no human could even bear to hear. And this brilliantly illustrates the core dynamic of the text. On one hand, you have the external reality, incredibly heavy chains, terrible stench, and severe sleep deprivation. But on the other hand, you have this explosive internal reality, a rushing mountain torrent, a body set completely ablaze, and an uncontrollable outpouring of words. The juxtaposition here is just incredible. The physical space is utterly confining and dark, and yet the internal experience is depicted as this unstoppable, burning force of nature.
Okay, then the narrative just sharply pivots. While still completely engulfed in these physical tribulations, the experience suddenly shifts from a rushing internal sensation to an external, auditory one. He writes, "I heard a most wondrous, a most sweet voice calling above my head." This voice entirely breaks through the darkness and the heavy oppressive suffering of the prison environment. Turning his face toward that sweet voice, he beholds a maiden. Let's impartially break down her specific symbolic attributes, straight from the text. First off, she is the embodiment of the remembrance of the Lord, literally suspended in the air before him. Second, her countenance is shining with the ornament of the good pleasure of God, and her cheeks are glowing with the brightness of the All-Merciful. And finally, she's raising a call between earth and heaven that completely captivates hearts and minds. He writes that she was bringing tidings that rejoiced his very soul, profoundly impacting both his inward and outer being.
Let's move to and see how this builds directly to the climax of the vision. The maiden performs a very specific physical action here. She points with her finger directly at his head. But, and this is crucial, she isn't just speaking to him in the isolation of that tiny prison cell. The text explicitly states she addresses a massive cosmic audience, all who are in heaven and all who are on earth. So the scale of the narrative instantaneously expands from a dark, cramped dungeon to literally the entirety of creation. So what does she actually say to this massive cosmic audience? Well, her proclamation is incredibly clear. She says, "By God, this is the best beloved of the world, and yet ye comprehend not. This is the beauty of God amongst you, and the power of his sovereignty within you, could you but understand." She goes on to declare him to be the mystery of God and his treasure. Looking at it as a narrative text, this represents a profound moment of theological proclamation. It's a declaration of divine identity situated right smack in the middle of unimaginable tribulation.
Now you might be wondering, why does this matter to us today? What should we take away from this explainer? Beyond the specific religious context, this really stands as a fascinating document of human capacity. It showcases the mind and spirit's incredible, almost unbelievable ability to generate or receive transcendent beauty and profound, world-altering meaning right in the absolute center of the darkest physical suffering imaginable. The physical body is chained, sure, but the narrative vision is completely unbound.
Which brings us to our final thought. Looking back at this profound historical account of the Maiden and the mountain torrent, it leaves us pondering a deeply compelling question. How exactly does the human spirit conjure its most brilliant light from the depths of its absolute darkest suffering? It's something to think about. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this structured breakdown illuminated the incredible contrasts at the heart of this text. Keep learning, and as always, keep asking questions.